Hi everyone, welcome back to Golden Era Alchemy. I'm your host, Valerie Gold. Today, we are going to be talking about belief systems. Most people believe they are out in the world making conscious everyday decisions, but the reality is that they're not. We are all living off of our beliefs, our programming, from everything from our upbringing to our relationships, to our career, to our friendship circles, to you name it, our religion, our spirituality, our politics. All of that is shaping the world that we live in by reflecting those beliefs back to us. The stories that we tell ourselves every day about a particular topic, a particular person, a particular situation, that is all programming that happened to us from a young age. Maybe it happened to us through a relationship. And these beliefs we carry with us and move about the planet, interacting with others, creating these interpersonal connections based on our programming. And I think really before we get too much into it, it's really important to make a distinction between your beliefs and your values. For example, a value is something like, I value honesty. Your belief could be, most people aren't honest. So that's kind of a distinction to help you sort of navigate. I think it's really important for us to delve into our own mind to decide where our beliefs came from, right? So taking out a sheet of paper, drawing a line down the center and saying, these are my beliefs and these are my values. And we talked about values in a previous podcast. So we can write down our beliefs, our core beliefs and our core values. So values are things like honesty, vulnerability, integrity, financial abundance, spirituality, this particular form of religion or politics or whatever. These are the things that I value. And then your belief systems are things that you believe to be true about yourself and your life, or people that you love, people that you have in your family, work, money. We all have a money story. This is actually one of my favorite things to talk about, is the money story. What are your beliefs about money? And I'll take money for an example. We'll go down that rabbit hole. So if you think about how you feel towards money, the word money, what comes up for you? And where does it come up for you in your body? I know that's kind of woo, but if you think about the feeling in your body that comes up when you say money, is it like a pit in your stomach? Is it something that excites you in the heart? Is it something that enlivens you? And what is your story about money? Like maybe some people have a story. I've heard this online that it used to be that you had to work really, really hard, maybe day laboring out in the fields to bring in a good paycheck. And then that evolved into, I have to get a good education. I have to go to college, and then I can get a high paying job and make money. And now I feel a lot of opportunity exists for us in this life, especially with opportunities to create an income online. So the beliefs around money can change, and the beliefs about anything else in your life can change. And for this particular podcast, I want to delve into ourselves internally and what it is that we believe to be true about ourselves. Like, take stock of how you feel about the way you look, the way you speak, the way you feel. Who are you out in the world? We talked about this in episode 1 with the self-concept, right? You're presenting yourself out to the world to be a specific way, and that's who you are. And that's your self-concept, the 3 components, right? And then we had the self-concept, and then we also have where we're going, right? The idealistic version of ourselves, where we want to be, even though we have the self-concept. So it's the self-image, the self-ideal, and the self-esteem. So that exists in this point in time, how we are right now, right? But that whole concept can also exist in the future for a future version of yourself, right? So you'll still have your self-image, your or your self-ideal then, and then your self-esteem and what it would look like in that next version of you that you're aspiring towards. So the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves and presenting ourselves out in the world and who we are to others and what do others think about us, right? That's also a story that we tell ourselves. Perhaps we think we are a certain way and we're presenting ourselves to be a certain way, or maybe we're self-conscious of something that we're out in the world doing. So it's important to also take stock of those beliefs of how you feel about yourself. Do you like yourself? That kind of goes back into the self-esteem. So I think going back to drawing that line on a sheet of paper and saying, these are my beliefs. This is what I believe about myself, my reality that I live in. I am this job. I have these hobbies. I am passionate about this. So all of these things that we believe about ourselves and the stories that we tell ourselves I think it's super important to sit down with this piece of paper and write out your core belief systems. What do I believe to be true? What stories am I telling myself? And to be really honest with you, a lot of the stories that you're telling ourselves are a subconscious program running in the background, right? So it's like, it's almost, we almost have to do a really deep dive to be able to extract that storyline and to say, okay, what plot is here? What have we told ourselves about who we are in the world? And when you start to write down your values and what you value in the world, then you'll start to figure out some of those subconscious programs, some of those subconscious stories, some of the stories you will know already. You can just ask yourself, for going back to the money thing, you can ask yourself, or even love, let's say love. How do I feel about love in relationships? What comes up for me internally in my body? Where do I feel it? And how do I feel towards love? Do I have any animosity? Do I have any resentment? Do I have a need to be loved? Like, do I have that void? You know, the way that we can start to feel better about some of these stories, if we notice that when we're thinking of what stories we're telling ourselves consciously, if you can figure out how you're feeling about those particular topics. And it's like, I hate to be one of those people that's like, well, how do you feel? But at the same time, feelings are a really good gauge on the reality of how it's affecting you physiologically, mentally, spiritually. So even though it's kind of like, why do we always have to talk about how we feel? Because it's an indicator of where we need to go and what kind of work we need to do. So when you go down these stories of love or money or relationship, maybe a relationship with a husband or a relationship with your parents, friends, whatever the case may be, how you feel about, I don't know, animals, anything, and really just start to feel per topic, like what it is that you feel about it and what it's bringing up for you. And if it's a negative feeling, perhaps that's something that you need to pay attention to, and a particular belief and story that needs your attention and probably needs to be changed. Because when you're thinking of personal alchemy, remember the bacon sizzling in the pan, and you're changing from one thing to another, you have to delve deep into the nitty gritty and figure out on a granular level. I learned that word recently and I truly love it because it's like the grains of something, like on a really, really level of like sand. Think of sand, right? If I was a being sitting here right now made of sand, so like the little bits of it, like what makes me up, right? So in your story, get into your story, what little tiny pieces are there that create this belief system, this story about that topic or this topic or that person or that situation? And is there anything that you can do to take it apart, to dismantle it, right? And then to bring it back together in a form and a belief system that feels good for you. It would be unrealistic, which although I am a proponent of delusion, I think it would be somewhat unrealistic and kind of, we would be setting ourselves up for failure if we said, well, my story around money is that I'm always poor. And tomorrow I'm going to wake up a millionaire. Like, obviously that's something that if we set out like that, I hate to tell people to be realistic because I truly don't believe that. I think that you need to take risks in life and be delusional. However, I also think that you need to set up a point from A to B and steps on how to get there, right? So you can be a billionaire from being poor, or a millionaire, whatever, but you have to have a plan. You have to have that dedication to the plan and take the actual steps out there. Of course, you can pray about it. And of course, you can try your manifestation rituals or whatever it is that y'all do to get from A to B. But it starts with creating that alternate story, right? I'm here, but I want to get here. So let me reverse engineer this. How can I go back, take some steps back? And we can talk about that also in a later podcast, but more so, I just want to put it in your awareness that change to get from here to here is not going to happen if you don't even know that this is your story. You're just moving around thinking, oh, I'm poor, I'm poor, I'm poor. So you're just perpetuating more of that behavior, right? If you decided to start to shift that and maybe say, well, I don't think I'm actually poor. It's just that, this, and this. And then you can start to ask yourself, well, what can I do? Are there any options for me to not feel that way? And how can I explore that to where it benefits me and my life? And then little by little, on a granular level, you'll start to get to another story. And I think that that's the alchemy of it, right? That's how we should approach our stories. period. We have to have those hard conversations with ourselves. I love this very much. When I first got in, I know I've talked about this in another podcast. When I first got into real estate, I worked with a really big broker who was like a really big fancy office. We had like 1,400 agents, like something crazy. We had lawyers on staff. We had these big, huge, beautiful conference rooms. We had a sales coach. So in some of the coaching that I went through in the beginning, when I first became an agent through that broker, we had a coach. And one of the things that he said to us that always stuck with me, as a real estate agent, I get paid to have the hard conversations. So that stuck with me because it was true. There were so many moving parts in a real estate transaction that there's so many opportunities for information to not get delivered the right way or to get delivered in a terrible way or whatever the case may be. So it was my job to get the weight of the information and then find some like way to deliver that information so that it's not as big a blow, right? So it's like, I have to have this hard conversation with this particular client about XYZ. And what I've learned through having to have hard conversations as a living is that we have to have the hard conversations to get anywhere, to get from A to B, to get the ball rolling, to keep the ball rolling. And that's in real life, in relationships with clients, in relationships with family members, in relationships with lovers and children, our parents, and also within ourselves. Like we have to really, if we cannot be honest with ourselves and take stock, right? And know who we are, what the belief systems are that are running our lives, then the chance of us actually getting from A to B, they're slimmer because we're not actually knowing what to do, what the work is to be done to get from here to here. As a depressive, I was depressed for 20 years. I talk about this in another podcast. One thing that I think I didn't realize about depression was that there is a huge added aspect of victimhood. You feel like you know better. As a depressive, at least for me, you feel like the veil has been lifted and I can see reality for exactly what it is. And these poor people don't know how shitty this life is. And was it the case all the time? No. But when you have that outlook and when you say that to yourself, it's really, really easy to fall into the feeling of victimhood, right? Things aren't going my way. Like this sucks. Like I'm a victim. I can't do anything about it. And I have overcome, for the most part, the majority of my life being depressed by doing this type of work. So it does have to be done on a granular level. It does have to be done piece by piece. And you can get to the point where you're completely out of the depression, but you have to come away from the victim mentality. You have to come away from holding on tight to those habits that are hurting you. And it could be something as small as watching horror films or listening to music that is beautiful, but is also kind of sad. So it's within yourself. You have to find those triggers, right? But going back to belief systems and core values, I think that if you can identify your values in the world, like whether it's honesty or integrity or courage or bravery or having a fit life and being healthy, like whatever your values are, that's going to help shape your boundaries, your direction in life, and it's going to give you purpose also as well, and to help shape your journey and to bring you closer to this version that you want to be, right? And then this version is what we work on with the stories that we tell ourselves and the belief systems. So we have to really know what that is and know what those are and really dig in and ask ourselves the hard questions. Going back to the idea of victimhood, when you are taking stock of your belief system and taking stock of your values, I think it's also equally important to do that with a sense of personal responsibility rather than a sense of shame. And so a quote that my friend recently said to me based on a meme we had shared with each other was, it's not so much about discipline. Think of it as devotion. So you're not disciplining yourself, right? Like a drill sergeant with a whip. Like you're trying to create an altar to yourself in your mind, in your heart, in your body, and just know that I'm doing all of this to lift me up, right? Because who's going to do that for you? The reality is that even though we want people to love us and we want people to be there for us and we want our romantic partner to sweep us off our feet, that's all good and great, but you are still responsible for doing the work. So being able to be honest with yourself, getting in there and taking that personal accountability, that personal responsibility for the things in your life, like that is going to set you apart. That's going to get you far. It's important to be in that energy of, I can do this. I can do this. I'm courageous. I'm a badass human. Look at all these things I do for other people. I can do that for myself and I'm worth it. And that feeds into self-love and self-worth, which we'll talk about a little bit later also in this podcast. What we should steer away from is victimhood and shame, right? So when we're taking stock of all of our belief systems and all of the things we've told ourselves, things may come up for you. You may start to feel guilty about treating yourself a certain way, or guilty about treating someone else a certain way based on a belief system or a story you told yourself. And I think it's equally important to know that we're just human and we are growing in the world, and you're here listening to this and watching this. So that's a good sign. You're out there in the world trying to improve and trying to alchemize. And that's the goal, right? That's how we get from A to B. So let's steer clear of shame. Let's also steer clear of victimhood. And let's know that it is within your personal power to take that responsibility into your own hands and create a situation that you're proud of. Create stories in your mind that you're proud of. Create values that reflect who it is that you want to be, who it is that you are now. Maybe you have some values that you just want to let go of, and you can say, all it takes is a decision. A decision is a fork in the road, right? So you have this like fork in the road of being this way that you're comfortable being, and then there's a new fork that came up that you could go down that road and be a better version of yourself, right? So it's taking that chance, taking that risk, placing that bet on yourself and going down the lesser traveled road, because it's going to lead you to a greater life. Everything changes, and I'm telling you this from experience. When you start to value yourself more, when you start to say, oh, actually, I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to be hanging out with those people. When you start to set yourself apart, when you start to be able to create a new reality for yourself, create higher standards for yourself, you're naturally going to gravitate to things that are going to lead you there. It happens so naturally. I want to share something that came to me in a dream, and I'm sharing this, and I don't talk about this a lot in this podcast, but maybe I should later. Intuition, guidance from the divine. I think that it's fair to say that whoever's listening to this podcast may not all believe the same things about God that I believe, and that's okay. This podcast isn't really geared towards that, but what I want to say is that for me, sometimes my guidance from the divine comes from meditation. It comes from messages that I get during meditation, or it comes from dreams I have, or it just comes from me praying. So I had this dream, and I won't go into the details of the dream, but what I got from this dream was God was trying to tell me that if I have a goal in life, if I have a project I want to do, if I have something I want to see become manifest in this 3D reality that we all live in, if I want to see something happen, then I have to start doing the work. And I also have to be aware of what else needs to be done, but I don't need to be in charge of getting every little piece together, because the way that the universe is set up, those pieces will come together on their own, and they will come together and help you. But you have to have a clear picture of what it is that you're going for. You have to have an end result. You have to have an end goal in mind. And then you have to start the project. You have to start what it is that you're doing. And then the rest of the pieces will know what to do. People will just come to you. You'll start to act differently. You'll start to present yourself differently in the world. And you'll start to meet new people. You'll start to, hang out with others that are a better influence. But it starts with you doing the work and you having a picture of what it is that you want to be in the world and where you want to go. And then the pieces naturally start to configure themselves together to create a finished product, to create a finished project in your world. So in closing, I just want to say I would love to challenge all of you to start to create your own personal philosophy based on what we worked out, based on your belief systems and your core values, moving that into the other version of you, right? What are the core belief systems of someone like that? What are the core values for someone like that? Based on that, you can start to create a personal philosophy. So waking up early in the morning is extremely important to me. I am in devotion to myself and my body because I want to live here on the planet even longer. And just start to realize like that version of you deserves these things, right? So it starts here. It starts with awareness. It starts with getting granular and knowing all of the little parts, and then doing the work, right? Doing the work. Maybe you pray about it. Maybe you meditate on it. Maybe you just present yourself differently out in the world, and the resources will come to you. I truly believe that. And I think that at the very least, the power of positive energy is on your side. And I give you that today. Through this podcast, I always pray that whatever messages come through me are heard and seen by the right people. And I'm open to whatever it is God wants to put in my mind and my heart for me to speak on. I think being gentle with yourself and having compassion for who it is that we are now, and also knowing that we do have the ability and the bravery and the courage, and we can take the risks to become this other version of ourselves. And it's okay to be this and still want this and not have shame about who we are now. We can absolutely have love and grace steering clear of victimhood in who we are now. That's absolutely a possibility and should be how we move about to get from A to B. The quality of your life is not determined so much by what happened to you as much as the meanings that your belief systems, your stories you're telling yourself, assigns to things. Things in the world, situations, all of it, nothing has meaning until you assign it meaning. So be careful what it is that you're consuming out in the world. Social media, movies, TV shows, music, all of it. Friendships, relationships, places you go. Start to reevaluate those things and ask yourself, like, how does this make me feel? Do I want to continue feeling like this? Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's somebody that you do love dearly, right? But really start to just question. I'm not saying change your whole life or cut everyone off. What I'm saying is start to take stock, start to notice. Because eventually it may be a decision that you make to leave certain people behind because they're not conducive to your growth. And I promise you, on a cellular level, I believe that that's what God wants. God wants you as a unique being to be out in the world with your specific purpose, because your purpose is not going to be the same than the next person or your families or your husbands or your kids. Even as a mother, and I am a mother, even as a mother, or not a mother, but even as a mother, you have a responsibility to yourself, to your purpose, to why you're here. You chose to come here on some level, right? I believe it in my belief system. You're here for a reason. We cannot be like a tug of war, right? We have all of these things tugging at us, work, this, that, whatever, but you still have a purpose here on the planet that you're here for. And what is yours? What is it? Is it poetry? Are you a writer? Do you play music? It's your responsibility to not only do your job and raise your family and provide for your wife and kids or whatever it is. It's also your responsibility to excavate that grain, a little seed inside of you that's golden and it's shining. It's got like these, it's like a little sun, a tiny little sun inside of you, but it's a seed and it's shining these like rays of sunshine of light out of you. And sometimes that gets covered up with dirt, right? I got to work. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to work out or whatever. I'm sick. I like all these things. I'm not taking care of myself. All of that covers up that light inside of you. So the more that you can start to excavate, take out a tiny little metaphoric shovel and start digging off that dirt, all that dirt off of that tiny golden seed inside of you, then you'll know. You'll start to feel it. You won't even have to really question. You'll just feel it. And you'll be like, oh, I should be doing this in the world. Even though it's like, I make little tiny trinkets and I sell them on the internet, like whatever it is, that's what you're doing to create joy, to create inspiration, to connect with others. We all have that. So I will leave you with that. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. I hope that at the very least you start to pay attention to the story that you're telling yourself in your mind. We all have stories that we tell ourselves, and start to stop yourself. Start to say like, actually, no, I'm not a piece of shit. Actually, no, I'm not, disgusting or whatever. Sometimes it's that bad. And we do have to acknowledge that. What if it's not true? What if the story isn't true? Then what could be true, right? Ask yourself that. So anyways, I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you. See you on the next podcast. Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Golden Era Alchemy. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Really quick before you go, I wanted to let you know I made something for you. If this week's episode resonated with you in any way, click the link below, drop your email. I'll shoot you over a PDF full of prompts covering everything we talked about in this podcast. And it's quick, easy, free, and you'll be on your way to transmuting and alchemizing. Again, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next podcast.